They called me extended family, in the house I built with my own 2 hands. They took my life savings, then told me I wasn't welcome. They thought I was just a tired old man. They were about to find out that this old contractor still knew how to tear things down. If this story finds you, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. It helps to know I'm not alone in this world. The smell of fresh sawdust used to calm my soul. It was my scent. 40 years of hard work, promises kept, things built to last. I ran my hand over the kitchen island. Granite, cool and smooth, a massive slab of stone, expensive, imported. I installed it myself. It took 3 days to get the seams invisible. It was perfect. Everything in this 4-bedroom colonial was perfect. It sat on the best street in town, the kind of street people slow down to admire. This house was my masterpiece, the culmination of everything I knew about construction, about quality. But this house wasn't for me. It was for Sarah, my daughter, and her husband David, but mostly it was for Emily, my granddaughter, 6 years old. She held my aging heart in her small hands. I stood in the grand entryway. Sunlight streamed through the arched windows, custom ordered. The light danced on the hardwood floors. I laid them myself, plank by plank. Today was the day. The final walkthrough was done. The house was finished, and the sacrifice to get here. It was immense. It wasn't just money. It was my life. A year ago, I was a comfortable man. I owned a contracting business, built it from the ground up. We were respected. We did good work. I also owned the small home Martha and I shared. 35 years. It was filled with memories, etched into the walls like the height marks as Sarah grew. Martha, my late wife, my anchor. Now, it was all gone. I cashed out everything, liquidated my retirement accounts, the ones Martha and I painstakingly filled. We dreamed of a cabin by the lake. I sold the business to John, my oldest friend. Watching him take over the workshop hurt. Seeing my name painted over on the trucks, that felt like losing a limb. And then the hardest part, I sold the family home, packing up Martha's things, taking the pictures off the walls. It felt like burying her all over again. I couldn't breathe some nights. The grief was a heavy weight on my chest. Every penny I had was now embedded in the walls of this new house. I was 65 years old, starting over. I lived in a small rented apartment across town. The rent was cheap. The silence was expensive. It echoed with the life I used to have. I did it gladly, or I told myself I did. After Martha passed 3 years ago, I was lost. Sarah was all I had left. I wanted her to have security, the kind I struggled for. David, her husband, worked in finance, something complicated with investments. He always wore expensive suits, drove a leased luxury car. He made good money, I thought. He certainly acted like it. But the housing market was insane. They talked about needing space for Emily, the right schools, the right neighborhood. They wanted the lifestyle, the image of success. They came to me a year ago, desperate. They couldn't secure a mortgage for a house like this. David's spending habits, Sarah's student loans. Their debt-to-income ratio was too high. Banks wouldn't touch them. They were drowning in debt, but looked rich. I didn't see it then. I only saw my daughter's desperation. I didn't hesitate. I didn't just offer a down payment. I offered them a future. I bought the land. I built the house myself, managing subcontractors, swinging a hammer when I had to, 16-hour days, worrying about budgets, supply chain delays, paying for everything, in full, no mortgage, no debt, a clean slate. It was my gift to them, a gift that cost me everything. I heard their car pull into the driveway, the expensive one, the sound of expensive tires on fresh gravel. I watched them get out. Sarah looked radiant, already seeing herself as the mistress of this mansion. She wore designer clothes. They seemed out of place on the dusty construction site this used to be. David, as always, was on his phone, brow furrowed, probably checking stocks, closing a deal. He lived his life in a state of perpetual distraction. He never really looked at people. He looked through them. They walked in. Sarah gasped. She spun around in the entryway. The acoustics were perfect. Dad. Oh, Dad. It's breathtaking. Her voice echoed in the high ceilings. It looks like something out of a magazine. She rushed forward, hugged me tightly. I held onto her, smelling the familiar scent of her lavender shampoo. For a fleeting moment, she was my little girl again, the one who used to follow me around job sites, wearing an oversized plastic tool belt. It's a good house, sweetheart, I said. My voice was thick, emotion I couldn't contain. Built to last. David strolled in. He finally pocketed his phone. He didn't look at me. He looked past me, his eyes sharp, calculating, scanning the room like he was appraising it. The crown molding looks good, Thomas, he said. His voice was flat. No warmth. Never any warmth. Did you use the premium lumber I requested? He continued, tapping a wall. I flinched internally. Premium lumber, his first concern. We need to ensure the resale value is maximized from day one, he said, adjusting his cuffs. This is an investment, after all. My stomach tightened. Resale value. Investment. That's what he saw. I saw the spot where Emily would hang her backpack. I saw the living room where they'd open Christmas presents. I saw a home. He saw a transaction. Only the best, David, I replied. I kept my voice even, swallowing the bitter taste in my mouth. I had to keep the peace, for Sarah. But a crack had appeared in the foundation, and I didn't know how deep it went. I reached into the pocket of my worn flannel shirt, pulled out a thick envelope. Inside was the ceremonial deed, a fancy document meant for show, and a set of shiny new keys. Well, I said, clearing my throat, here it is. It's all yours. David took the envelope. He didn't hug me. He never did. He offered a firm, brief handshake, the kind you give a business associate, not a father-in-law. Not the man who just handed you his entire life. This is very generous, Thomas, he said. He was already inspecting the keys. It certainly sets us up well for the next 5-year plan. 5-year plan. My life's work reduced to a line item on his spreadsheet. I felt a chill in the warm room. We moved into the kitchen, the heart of the home. Sarah was already opening the cabinets. Admiring the soft-close hinges I installed, the conversation turned bright, animated. But it wasn't about the house anymore, it was about their trip. For the past 6 months, we had talked about a grand vacation. A celebration, 3 weeks in Europe. Paris, Rome, the Amalfi Coast. It was meant to be a family trip. A way to reconnect after the stress of the build. They insisted I come, a thank you trip. Sarah had called it. I was excited, more than I let on. I renewed my passport. I bought new walking shoes. My old work boots were falling apart. I had been studying Italian on an app. I imagined showing Emily the Eiffel Tower, watching her taste real gelato. It was the light at the end of the tunnel. The reward for a year of sacrifice. I thought it was the start of a new chapter. It was the end of one. I was looking at the itinerary last night, I said, smiling. I leaned against the island I built. That cooking class in Tuscany looks amazing. I paused, waiting for their excitement to match mine. I can't believe we're leaving in just 3 days. I should probably start packing. The silence that followed was immediate and sharp. It was a suffocating silence, the kind that sucks all the air out of the room. Sarah stopped smiling. She looked down at the granite countertop, tracing the pattern with her finger. She wouldn't look at me. Her body language shifted, closing off, creating distance. Why was she suddenly so cold? It was David who spoke. He straightened up, slipped his hands into the pockets of his expensive slacks. He looked me straight in the eye, his expression completely devoid of warmth. It was the look he probably gave people when he was firing them. Actually, Thomas, we need to talk about Europe. His voice was smooth, practiced, like he was closing a business deal. My stomach plummeted. A cold dread washed over me. The beautiful kitchen suddenly felt cold, hostile. Talk about what? I managed to say. My voice weak. Are the dates changing? Is the flight canceled? Not exactly, David said. He cleared his throat. Small, deliberate sound. Sarah and I have discussed this at length, and we've made a decision. He paused, letting the words hang in the air, ensuring they had maximum impact. You are not coming with us to Europe. I stared at him. Sure, I had misheard. The sound of the brand new HVAC system seemed to fade away. The world tilted. I'm sorry. What? David didn't blink. His expression didn't soften. We feel that this trip needs to be a time for us to bond. Just the 3 of us. He paused again, then delivered the killing blow. My wife and I prefer this vacation to be a family vacation only. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the breath out of me. My chest tightened. Painfully. I am family. My voice cracked. I'm Sarah's father. I'm Emily's grandfather. You are, of course, David said. His tone was condescending, as if explaining a complex concept to a child. But your extended family? Extended family? This trip is about our core unit, he continued, gesturing between him and Sarah, me, Sarah, and Emily. It's important for our dynamic, especially with the new house. We need space to reconnect as a young family, starting a new chapter. Extended family. The words echoed in my mind. I was the man who raised her, the man who held her hand on the first day of school, the man who just gave her the keys to his entire life, and I was extended. I looked at my daughter, my Sarah. Sarah? Honey? Is this what you want? She flinched. She glanced up at me briefly, her eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and fear. Then she looked back down at the floor. She was choosing him. She always chose him. David's right, Dad, she whispered, her voice trembling. We just need some space. It's been stressful, with the build and everything. We just want this time for us. She paused, then added the final insult, the one designed to make me feel old, useless. And you know how tired you get, she said softly. It's a fast-paced trip. Lots of walking, late nights. It would be too much for you. You wouldn't enjoy it. Tired, stressful. I thought about the 16-hour days I'd worked for the past year, the sleepless nights, the agonizing decision to sell my business and my home. I was tired because I had given them everything I had, and now they were using my exhaustion as an excuse to discard me. Space, I repeated. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. Thomas, please don't make a scene, David said sharply. His tone hardened. The mask of politeness slipped. This is a difficult decision, but it's what's best for our family. Our family, not mine. You're being overly sensitive, he continued, dismissing me. He checked his watch, a Rolex. I probably paid for it. Indirectly. We appreciate the house. Immensely, he said, as if reading from a script, that the transaction is complete. The transaction is complete. 4 words that summarize my worth to him. It doesn't entitle you to dictate our vacations, he finished, or insert yourself into every aspect of our lives. Frankly, we need boundaries. Boundaries. The insult was so casual, so dismissive. It stole what little breath I had left. They hadn't just excluded me. They had patronized me. They had taken my life's work, used it to secure their dream home, and in the very same breath, discarded me like an old, used tool. Boundaries, I said. My voice flat, dead. The anger was starting to burn through the hurt. A cold fire igniting in my chest. I understand perfectly. I turned and walked out the front door. The heavy oak door I had hung myself. I didn't look back. I couldn't. If I looked back at my daughter's face, I might have broken down. I drove back to my small, empty apartment. It felt like a prison cell. I sat in the old leather chair, the only piece of furniture I kept from my old house. Martha's chair. I looked at the framed photo on the small side table. Martha, smiling, her hand on Sarah's shoulder. What did I do wrong, Martha? I whispered to the silence. Did I give her too much? The silence didn't answer. I didn't sleep that night. I replayed the conversation over and over. Extended family. The transaction is complete. The hurt was a physical ache. By dawn, the shock had crystallized into something cold and hard. Resolve. They wanted boundaries? I would give them boundaries. The next morning, I drove to the old workshop. I needed the leery, the smell of sawdust and oil. John was already there. He took one look at my face and stopped what he was doing. Thomas, what happened? He asked, wiping grease off his hands. You look like you've been hit by a truck. They love the house, John, I said. My voice was hoarse. They love it so much they don't want me around to ruin the view. I told him everything. The sacrifice. The exclusion. The cold way David dismissed me. The cowardly way Sarah let him. John listened silently, his expression growing darker. When I finished, he slammed his fist on the workbench. That arrogant little snake, he roared. I knew it. I knew he was a user. John had never liked David. He saw through the suits and the smooth talk from day one. He bleeds people dry, Thomas. John continued, his face red. And Sarah, after everything you've done, you built them a palace. They said they needed boundaries, I muttered. Boundaries? John exploded. They don't get to banish you after taking everything you own. He paced the workshop floor. His fury mirrored my own. You need to do something, Thomas. You can't let them treat you like this. It's an insult to Martha's memory. What can I do? I asked, feeling helpless. The house is theirs. I handed them the deed. Are you sure it's finalized? John stopped pacing, his eyes sharp. The official transfer with the county. I paused. My lawyer, Michael, was supposed to file it this morning. Call him, John insisted, grabbing my arm. Call him right now. Maybe it's not too late. Hope. A dangerous flicker of it sparked in my chest. But John wasn't finished. Thomas, there's something else you should know, John said, lowering his voice. I didn't want to say anything while you were building the house. I thought maybe I was wrong about him. Wrong about what? I ran into Mark Stevens last week, John said. Mark used to work with David. We had a beer. I mentioned David. John hesitated. Mark got real quiet. He said David didn't just leave the firm, Thomas. He was fired. Fired? David told everyone he left for a better opportunity. Why? I asked, my stomach twisting. Embezzlement, John said grimly. He stole from clients. The firm covered it up to avoid a scandal. But Mark said David is in deep debt. Not just banks. Bad people. The blood drained from my face. The expensive suits. The leased car. It was all a facade, a desperate attempt to look successful while he was drowning. The house wasn't just for status. It was an asset he needed to liquidate. He never intended to live there. He intended to flip it. And I had handed it to him on a silver platter. The betrayal suddenly felt much deeper, much darker. It wasn't just entitlement. It was manipulation. Call Michael, John repeated, his voice urgent. Now, I called Michael. He was a good man. Meticulous. Thorough. Thomas? I was just about to call you, Michael said. Stop, I interrupted, my voice desperate. Don't file anything. I need to see you. Immediately. Michael paused. My office. 30 minutes. I drove to Michael's office, my hands shaking. The world looked different now. Sharper, more dangerous. I laid out the situation, the exclusion from the trip, the demand for boundaries, and then the revelation from John, the embezzlement, the debts. Michael listened patiently, his expression professional, but his eyes hardened when I mentioned the embezzlement. It's a messy situation, Thomas, Michael said when I finished. Morally reprehensible, legally complicated. He sighed, rubbing his temples. If the deed was signed and delivered, the house is generally considered theirs. Even if it hasn't been recorded, a gift is a gift. My heart sank. The hope vanished. But, Michael continued, holding up a finger, let me check the recording status. Just to be sure. He turned to his computer, typed rapidly. I watched him, holding my breath, praying for a miracle. He stopped suddenly, leaning closer to the screen. Thomas, he said slowly. Wait a minute. This is interesting. What is it? I asked, my heart pounding. No, he said, turning the screen towards me. The deed transfer. It hasn't been filed yet. I stared at the screen. What do you mean? My assistant, Mary. She had a family emergency yesterday afternoon. Michael explained. Her son broke his arm. She left early before she could submit the paperwork. A broken arm. A small, seemingly insignificant detail. She called in sick this morning, Michael said. She hasn't gotten to it yet. This was the twist. A bureaucratic delay that changed everything. What does that mean? I asked. It means the transfer of ownership is not technically complete, Michael explained, his voice gaining energy. Thomas, legally the house is still 100% in your name. You own everything. I closed my eyes. A wave of relief washed over me. I wasn't trapped. I was in control. So, I can take it back? I whispered. It's still yours, Michael confirmed. And Sarah and David? They are just visitors. While Michael outlined the options, my mind raced. I had a chance to undo my mistake. But did I want to? If I did this, I would be blowing up my family. I would be taking a house away from Emily. I would be creating a rift that might never heal. But what family? A daughter who let her husband manipulate me? A son-in-law who was a criminal? I thought about Martha. She would want me to be respected. She always said, "You teach people how to treat you." If I let this stand, I was teaching them I was weak. A victim. As I wrestled with the decision, a knock came at Michael's office door. His temporary assistant poked her head in. "Miss Harrison, there's a call for Thomas," she said. "It's Elaine Dubois," she says. "It's urgent." Elaine, the nosy neighbor who lived next door to the new house. I took the call, confused. "Thomas, I hope I'm not interrupting," Elaine said, her voice hushed. "I saw you leave yesterday. You looked upset." "I'm fine, Elaine. What is it?" "I saw them arguing," she said. "Sarah and David, in the driveway, right after you left. I was gardening. I couldn't help but overhear." My grip tightened on the phone. "David was furious," Elaine continued. "He was yelling about the timeline being ruined. He said we were supposed to list the house next week. The buyers in California won't wait. List the house next week." John was right. They were going to flip it. "And Sarah?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What did she say?" "She was crying," Elaine said. "But not because of you, Thomas." She was yelling back at him, saying he promised her 60% of the profit, that she deserved it for managing you, managing me. My daughter wasn't just a victim of David's manipulation. She was a partner in it. She had played me, used my love for her as a weapon. The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. It wasn't just greed, it was calculated deceit. From my own flesh and blood, the internal conflict vanished, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. If this story has resonated with you so far, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. It helps our channel grow and bring more stories like this to light. It was then that my thoughts were interrupted again. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text message. David's name. My stomach churned. I opened the message. "Thomas, Sarah is very upset about yesterday. We need to smooth things over before the trip." Smooth things over, as if I was the one who had caused the problem. Also, the text continued. "The upgraded Italian marble for the master bathroom backsplash is $10,000 over budget. Italian tileable. They were still spending my money, preparing the house for the sale. The supplier needs payment today or they will delay the installation." And then the kicker. "Since you are no longer incurring the expense of the Europe trip, please wire the difference to the supplier this afternoon. Thanks." The audacity was staggering. The entitlement. They thought they had won. They thought I was still their obedient ATM. The text extinguished any remaining doubt. My family wasn't destroyed. It was already gone. Replaced by a transaction. "Michael," I said. My voice was firm. The tremor gone. "What do we do now?" "What do you want to do, Thomas?" Michael asked, looking at me carefully. "I want to sell it," I said. My voice cold, resolute. "Put it on the market immediately. I want a quick cash sale. I don't care if I take a small loss. I just want it gone." I took a deep breath. "And I want them out." "Are you sure?" Michael asked. "This will be explosive, Thomas. It will get ugly. And if David is involved with dangerous people—" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life," I said. "They made their choice. Now I'm making mine." Michael nodded slowly. "All right. I know a few investors. I can have offers by the end of the day. I'll also draft an official notice to vacate." I walked out of Michael's office, feeling a strange mixture of grief and empowerment. I had taken back control, but I knew the hardest part was yet to come. The storm was about to break. I went back to the apartment to prepare for the fallout. I paced the small living room. As I was putting on my jacket to leave, there was a knock at the door, heavy, impatient. I opened it. A large man stood in the hallway. Expensive suit. But his eyes were cold, dead. He didn't look like a salesman. "Thomas Harrison?" he asked, his voice gravelly. "Yes. Who are you?" "Name's Vince," he said, stepping into my apartment without being invited. He looked around the small space, sneering. Downgrade from the new place, huh? My blood ran cold. How did he know where I lived? What do you want, Vince? I asked, keeping my voice steady. I'm an associate of David's, Vince said, picking up the photo of Martha and Sarah. Nice family. He put the photo down, his eyes locking on mine. David owes me a significant amount of money, he continued, his voice low and menacing. He assured me that the acquisition of a certain asset would cover his debt. The house. He meant the house. He seems to think you might interfere with that acquisition, Vince said, stepping closer. I'm here to ensure you don't. He tapped my chest with a thick finger. David gets the house. I get my money. And you stay out of it, or things might get complicated. He smiled. A cold, cruel smile. Capice? He didn't wait for an answer. He turned and walked out, leaving the door open, the threat hanging in the air. I wasn't just fighting for my dignity anymore. I was fighting for my life. The stakes had just gotten much higher. A few hours later, my phone rang. Rang! It was Sarah. I answered, steeling myself for the confrontation. Dad? What is going on? Her voice was panicked. High-pitched. David is furious. Of course he was. He said you didn't respond to his text about the marble backsplash, she continued, her voice trembling. The supplier is threatening to cancel the order. She paused, taking a shaky breath. Why are you being so difficult? She whispered. You're going to ruin the master bathroom. That was her priority, the master bathroom. Not the fact that they had ruined my life. Not the fact that they had ruined my life. Not the fact that a loan shark had just threatened me in my own apartment. I'm being difficult, I asked, the anger simmering beneath the surface. I gave you a house, Sarah, a house. My voice cracked. I gave you everything I had, I continued, my voice rising. And you tell me I'm not family enough to go on a vacation? And now you're whining about marble. Dad, please, just keep the peace, she pleaded, her voice dissolving into tears. David is under a lot of stress. Stress, the excuse for his cruelty. His crimes. It's just $10,000, she sobbed. We need this? Please, just pay the supplier. No, Sarah, I said, my voice cold. You don't need Italian marble. You need a reality check. I paused, letting the words sink in. You need to understand that actions have consequences. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking. My daughter was a stranger, a reflection of her husband's greed. It was heartbreaking, but it also strengthened my resolve. That evening, Michael called. Thomas, we have an offer. My breath caught in my throat. A development company, he continued. It's a cash offer, slightly above what you paid. They recognize the quality of the construction. He paused. They want to close immediately. Tomorrow morning. It was happening. The speed of it was dizzying. Accept the offer, I said. The words sealing my fate and theirs. The closing was scheduled for 9 a.m. the following morning. I knew I had to face them one last time. I had to tell them myself. It was the last shred of respect I could offer the memory of the daughter I once had. I drove to the house, my house, the next morning, right after the closing was finalized. The wire transfer hit my account. I was financially secure again, but I had never felt poorer. A large moving truck was in the driveway. They were moving in They were building their dream on a foundation that no longer existed. It was time for the demolition. I walked into the house. The smell of fresh paint was still strong. They were in the living room, directing the movers where to put a large, expensive-looking white sofa. Thomas, what are you doing here? David asked. Immediately defensive, his tone sharp with irritation. He glared at me as if I was trespassing on his property. I thought we made ourselves clear, he continued, his voice dripping with contempt. We are very busy today. We leave for Europe tomorrow. Europe. They still thought they were going. I'm here to talk to my daughter, I said, walking towards Sarah, ignoring David. Dad, please, Sarah whispered, looking nervously at David. Her eyes red and puffy. Not now. We can talk when we get back. When they get back? To the house they thought was theirs. Sarah, I want you to listen to me, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. trying to reach the daughter I knew was buried deep inside this entitled stranger. I spent my life savings on this house for you, I continued. For us, because I thought we were a family. My voice trembled slightly. The way you treated me, I said, my eyes locked on hers. The way you excluded me, it broke my heart. It was cruel. Thomas, we are not discussing the vacation again, David interrupted, stepping between us, asserting his dominance. He jabbed a finger in my direction. You are emotionally blackmailing her, he sneered. This is manipulative behavior. Manipulative. He was the master manipulator. And he had turned my daughter against me. We've discussed this, David continued, his voice rising. The house was a gift. No strings attached. You don't get to hold it over our heads. I looked at my daughter. I needed to give her one last chance. I had to know if there was anything left to salvage. Sarah, this is your moment, I said. My eyes locked on hers. You can choose to treat me like family. You can acknowledge the sacrifice I made. You can stand up for me. I paused, waiting for her response. Or you can choose him, I said, gesturing towards David, and his definition of family. Sarah hesitated, looking from me to David. I could see the conflict in her eyes, the fear, the guilt, the desire for the lifestyle he represented. For a fleeting moment, I thought she might choose me, but then David spoke, his voice dripping with contempt. Do you see what he's doing, Sarah? He thinks because he gave us this house, he owns us. He turned to me, his face contorted in a sneer. He thinks he can control us with his money. He said, his voice loud enough for the movers to hear. He turned back to Sarah, his eyes blazing. Tell him to leave. Now, or I will. The ultimatum hung in the air. Sarah's expression hardened. The flicker of the daughter no vanished, replaced by a cold mask. She took a step back, closer to David, physically aligning herself with him. The ultimate betrayal. She chose the house, the lifestyle, over me. Dad, David is right, she said, her voice cold and firm. You're using the house to control us. It's toxic. Toxic. I was toxic. Please leave, she whispered, looking away. You're ruining our moving day. The last shred of hope died inside me. The choice was made. The pain was intense, but it also brought clarity. There was nothing left to save. Okay, I said, the word heavy with finality. I understand. I turned to the movers. They were watching the scene awkwardly, holding the ends of the white sofa. Gentlemen, I said, my voice loud and clear, you can stop unloading the truck. The movers froze, looking confused. In fact, I continued, you can start loading everything back onto it. These people are not moving in. David laughed, a harsh, barking sound, filled with disbelief. What are you talking about? Who do you think you are? He walked towards me, his face arrogant. You can't just walk in here and give orders, he sneered. This is my house. No, it's not, I said, my voice echoing in the large room, strong and steady. I am the owner of this house. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the paperwork Michael had given me. The sale agreement with the development company, signed and finalized just an hour ago, and the notice to vacate. I handed it to David. He snatched it from my hand, his eyes scanning the document. His face turned pale, the color draining from his cheeks. His arrogant smirk vanished, replaced by a look of pure horror. What is this? He whispered, his voice trembling, the paper shaking in his hand. Notice of sale, Sarah cried, looking over his shoulder, her voice rising in panic. What have you done? Dad, what is this? They've sold the house, I said calmly. You can't do that, David screamed, his face contorted in rage, his composure finally breaking. We live here. This is our home. He lunged towards me, his eyes wild. You gave us the deed, he roared. We have it in writing. I handed you a ceremonial copy, I corrected him, my voice cold and precise. The official deed transfer was never filed. It was never recorded with the county. I paused, letting the reality of the situation sink in. The house remained in my name, I continued. Legally, it was always mine, and now it belongs to the new owners. They stared at me, their faces frozen in shock. the realization of what they had lost slowly sinking in. But why we moved our things in, Sarah stammered, gesturing wildly at the boxes. We changed our address. We enrolled Emily in the new school. Then you better change it back, I said. Feeling nothing but a profound emptiness, David exploded. He threw the papers on the floor and lunged towards me again, his eyes wild with fury. You monster, he screamed. You vindictive old man. How could you do this to us? To your own granddaughter, you ruined our lives. How could you do what you did to me? I countered, my voice rising to match his, the rage finally breaking free. I gave you everything. My retirement, my business, my home, my entire life. I stepped closer to him, my eyes blazing. And you didn't just take it, I continued, my voice shaking with anger. You planned to steal it. You were going to flip this house next week. Weren't you, David? David froze. His face turned ashen. He knew I knew. I know about the embezzlement, David, I said, my voice low and dangerous. I know about the debts. I know about Vince. David staggered back, his eyes wide with fear. And you, Sarah, I turned to my daughter. Her face was streaked with tears. You knew. You were arguing about your cut. 60% for managing me. Sarah choked on a sob. She couldn't deny it. The truth was out. We were going to take care of you, Dad. Sarah pleaded, raw desperation in her voice. We made a mistake. Please, undo this. No, you weren't, I said, shaking my head sadly. You were taking from me. There's a difference. And I am done being taken from. I looked at David. He was trembling. The bully had been broken. You wanted a family vacation, I said. My voice cold and steady. You wanted boundaries. Now you have them. The biggest boundary of all. Thomas, wait, David said, his voice pleading. The anger turned to desperation. He realized he had lost. Now he was trying to bargain. We made a mistake, he stammered. We were stressed. The Europe trip. It was a terrible idea. He took a step towards me, his hands outstretched. You're right, he said, his voice sickeningly sweet. You are family, core family. We want you to come with us. The desperate attempt to bargain, fueled by panic, not remorse. We'll book your ticket right now, he continued, pulling out his phone. Please, Thomas, don't do this. We'll do anything. I looked at him. I saw the insincerity, the naked greed in his eyes. He didn't want me. He wanted the house, the asset, and he was willing to say anything to get it back. It's too late, I said. The words final. The sale is complete. I turned to the movers, who were still standing there, unsure what to do. You have 24 hours to get their belongings out of this house, I said, my voice loud and clear, or the new owners will have the sheriff remove them. I turned and walked out, leaving them standing in the middle of the entryway, surrounded by the ruins of their dream, the masterpiece I had built. The sound of Sarah's sobbing echoed behind me as I closed the door. The fallout was swift, brutal. Sarah and David were homeless. They were forced to move into a cramped, overpriced extended-stay hotel. They canceled the Europe trip. Obviously, they lost their deposits. Thousands of dollars vanished. Their image of success, the lifestyle they craved, shattered. But that wasn't the worst part for them. Vince didn't take disappointment well. I heard through John that David had been hospitalized. Broken ribs, a shattered jaw. He had run out of people to manipulate, run out of assets to leverage. Sarah, faced with the reality of David's crimes and the danger he had put them in, finally saw the truth. The pressure exposed the cracks in their marriage. It crumbled under the weight of their deceit. I didn't reach out to them. I couldn't. The wound was too deep, the trust shattered beyond repair. I needed time to heal, to process the grief of losing my daughter. I took the money from the sale of the house, reinvested it. I secured my future. The future I had almost given away. John offered me a partnership in the business I had sold him. He hadn't finished the rebranding yet. My name was still on the lease. I accepted. I started working again, not because I had to, but because I loved the work. I needed the routine, the sense of purpose. The smell of sawdust and varnish began to calm my soul again. I bought a small house near the workshop. Comfortable, quiet, and mine. It wasn't the cabin by the lake Martha and I dreamed of, but it was a start. But I couldn't punish my granddaughter. Emily was innocent. I met with Michael again. Set up an irrevocable trust fund for Emily, for her education, for her future. I appointed Michael as the trustee. David and Sarah would never be able to touch it. It was the true legacy I wanted to leave behind. A year passed. The silence between Sarah and me remained. A vast, gaping chasm. I missed her terribly. I missed the little girl she used to be. I missed the daughter I thought I had. I wondered if I had been too harsh, if I had destroyed any chance of reconciliation. One sunny afternoon, I was sitting on my porch, sanding a piece of oak for a custom cabinet. The repetitive motion was soothing, a meditation. A car pulled into the driveway. I recognized it. It was Sarah's old car, the one she had before she married David. The least luxury car was gone. She got out. She was alone. She looked thinner, older. The radiance was gone, replaced by a weary sadness. Her eyes were hesitant, uncertain. She walked up to the porch, her hands trembling. She stopped at the bottom of the steps, looking up at me, afraid to come closer. I put down the sandpaper and waited. My heart was pounding in my chest. "Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, searching her face for the daughter I knew. "I left him," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "David, I filed for divorce. He's in prison, Dad, for the embezzlement." It all came out. She took a shaky breath, gathering her courage. "Emily is with me. We're living in a small apartment downtown. I'm working as a waitress." She looked down at her hands. "I was so wrong, Dad," she continued, her voice trembling. "I let him control me. I let him convince me that money and status were more important than family. I forgot who I was," she whispered. "I forgot who you were." She started to cry then, deep, racking sobs that shook her whole body. She leaned against the railing, unable to stand. "I'm so sorry, Dad," she choked out between sobs. "I'm so sorry for what we did to you, for what I did to you. I understand if you hate me. I hate myself." I stood up, walked down the steps towards her. I hesitated for a moment. The memory of her betrayal, her cold words in the entryway, the calculated deceit, still fresh. But this was my daughter. The broken, remorseful woman standing before me was the echo of the little girl I loved. I pulled her into a hug. She clung to me, sobbing into my shoulder, her body trembling with the weight of her regret. I held her tight, the scent of lavender shampoo filling my senses. "I don't hate you, Sarah," I whispered, my own tears finally falling. "I missed you. It didn't fix everything. The trust was still broken. The wounds were still deep. We had a long road ahead of us. A lot of difficult conversations. A lot of healing to do, but it was a start. I realized then that family isn't something you can buy. It's not defined by deeds or bank accounts. It's something you build, slowly, with trust, respect, and love. I had built a house, hoping it would bring us closer. Instead, it revealed the truth. It showed me the cracks in the foundation of our relationship. It showed me that sometimes you have to tear everything down to the studs before you can rebuild something stronger. I looked over her shoulder at the sunlight filtering through the trees. I had my dignity, I had my self-respect, and now, maybe, I had my daughter back. It was a foundation far stronger than granite or steel. It was a foundation we could build on. Thanks for listening. If this story touched you, please rate it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.